Hello everyone and welcome back to our town. So we are now in the 2000s and we'll find out how our town has changed over this decade. So the population in Britain at the beginning of this decade in the year 2000 itself was 58.89 billion people, and by the end of this decade in 2009 we had a population of 62.28 million people. Life expectancy had increased a lot as well, and by the end of this decade it was up to 80 years. GDP at the beginning of this decade was $1.648 trillion, and by 2009 it was $2.383 trillion. Overall, the 2000s were known by many guises, mainly by the noughties, the 2000s, all sorts of fun names to try and make sense of how to say this decade. Wasn't as simple as the 90s or the 80s, so we had to come up with something invented. It was a decade of the internet, globalization, and faster communication with everyone, especially with the invention of social media at the end of this decade. Economic growth had grown considerably. We had social, environmental, and mass extinction as well during this decade. So lots of different factors to consider in this decade. We also had a rise in the demand for energy resources as things like oil and gas and stuff are slowly being depleted. There's a need now to have renewable energy sources, and economic growth was still very vulnerable. And obviously we had the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, which we are still feeling the effects from as well. So politically wise, in 2000s we had the war on terror and Afghanistan, and obviously the Iraq war as well, which was their supposed nuclear weapons that never existed, and I have no idea why they ever decided to go in, but they did. We also had the 7/7 bombing in London. We also had 9/11 in the US as well. We also had a new Mayor of London position for the London Assembly, as London had many issues that were not met nationally, so it was a bit like Wales and Scotland are, with its own little devolved parliament. We also had a new Labour leader, and obviously by the end of this decade we have a change in political party as well. Healthcare wise, there was a rise in antibiotic resistance is increasing, and that's still increasing at this moment for people overtaking antibiotics. We had a foot and mouth crisis in 2001, which killed over 10 million sheep and cattle to stop the spread of the disease, and lots of different things were affected by that, like travel around the country and stuff, and having to go into washing foot baths and cleaning your car if you drove through the countryside. We also had swine flu cases as well, which was fun. And economics wise, China became the global economic giant and leading the way. Gold was at its lowest point, and the UK government decided to sell their gold between 1999 and 2002, which was probably a very stupid thing, because that was the lowest it had been in throughout the recent history. In 2007, 1 in 7 people were spending on Tesco grocery stores and general merchandise retailers as well. We also had a house price increase of 132% at the start of 2000, and it was at 91% overall for the entire decade. And considering that people's wages were only going up by 40%, there was a serious division between being able to afford a house and the money people were being paid. We also obviously had the financial crisis, which started with the bank Northern Rock here in the UK, and obviously there was different circumstances in America that caused it as well. Also, this means that the banks had to be bailed out by the government, and sort of some of them are now still owned by the government and paying off the debts that they couldn't pay because they were lending people too much money. We also had a rise of unemployment by the end of the decade because obviously people couldn't afford to keep people on in their jobs and stuff because of the crisis. Science and technology wise, we had a few lovely discoveries during this decade. In 2000 we had quantum curiosities as a project. In 2001 we had molecular circuitry and cancer research. In 2002 we had genome progress in that sort of research. In 2003 we had the discovery of dark energy and genes that could cause mental illness and the possibilities of that. In 2005 we had plant development, climate change and nuclear fusion possibilities. In 2007 we discovered cosmic rays and use for that, and memory and imagination studies as well, especially with the rise in dementia and illnesses like that. And in 2008 we had the switch on of the LHC at CERN, which I've actually been lucky enough to actually go see for myself, which is very cool. And we also discovered exoplanets and researching a little bit more of that, and obviously later annexing poor Pluto to be an exoplanet. Poor Pluto. In 2009 we did tests in X-ray lasers, we found water on Mars, and we confirmed the universe's age at that point to be 13.7 billion years old, which is very old. Technology wise, we had GPS in our cars, hybrid vehicles were becoming a thing, and I don't know why they are because they're rubbish. And we also had satellite radio, so obviously we're launching more and more satellites and polluting our space. We also had text messaging, a 3G network was available to most people by the end. We also had social networking like MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all sorts of goodness that came from those. We also had the smartphones as well to keep up with all this wonderful technology and internet. And we have the iPhone being released in 2007. We had USB sticks. We had the new Windows operating systems and obviously new Macs and stuff to go in competition with that. We had things like Google, Wikipedia. We also had chip and pins for our cards, which seems like everyday use now is a chip and pin, and obviously we get contactless in the next decade. We also get the rise of Blu-ray, DVDs, the iPod, classic iPod, digital cameras, and obviously flat screen TVs as well. Transport wise, we had the introduction of new route masters in London. We also had the Boris bikes as well, and more high-speed rail connections as well. Society wise, we had the introduction of a legalization of same-sex marriages, and the first ones happening near the end of this decade. We had further rights for LGBT community. We obviously had the obesity crisis, which they love to go on about all the time, and to go with that we also were told that we had to eat 5 pieces of fruit and veg a day. Oh, such a struggle. We also had the smoking ban brought in as well, so you can't smoke in public places or bars or restaurants and stuff inside, so you have to go outside and be shamed for going out and smoking. You also had the rise in people taking antidepressants, and we also had wonderful Jamie Oliver, a UK chef, campaigning against unhealthy school meals because they could serve you literally everything, and you could buy Coke in your school and eat chocolate bars for lunch, and it was wonderful until he stopped that. Films wise, we had some epic films during this decade. We had The Lord of the Rings, we had the start of the MCU with Iron Man, we had the Harry Potter franchise, we had the first 3D IMAX film in Avatar, and the start of the Batman series as well. Music wise, we had people like Eminem, Robbie Williams, Outkast, Jay-Z, Kanye West, The Killers, Arctic Monkeys, and the start of reality pop TV shows like The X Factor and all the other ones, Pop Idol, and all the other versions of the same show about winning your fame and stuff like that. So the fashion in the noughties was having highlighted hair, wearing crop tops, low-rise jeans, cargo trousers, bell bottoms were back in as well. We also had the increase in wearing skinny jeans, especially in teens wearing their crop tops and skinny jeans. Oh, it's like they can wear nothing else. Sketcher trainers, we had geek chic as well, and obviously we had emo style with their getting inspiration for bands like Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco, wearing black and band t-shirts, having long fringes and eyeliner, and it was a glorious movement. Games wise, we had the PlayStation 2, the PS3, the Xbox, and we had obviously the wonderful game The Sims was at the start of this decade. We had things like iToy, Uncharted franchise, Grand Theft Auto, Halo, Call of Duty, Minecraft. So some very wide and various games that happened and were developed in this decade. Architecture wise, we had some key landmark buildings built in the UK. So we had the Millennium Bridge, which it's always a fun story to talk about because so many people crossed it that it started to sway and they had to close it to structurally fix it up. So no longer sways, unfortunately. It did get destroyed by the Death Eaters in the Harry Potter film, which was fun. We also had the Gherkin being built as well, which is in the centre of the city. We had the new Wembley Stadium. We had the Birmingham Selfridges department store as well, and all these buildings, and the new Mayor of London's office as well. So they were all contemporary architecture buildings, a style of the 21st century, covers a whole different range of styles, from very contemporary like glass ones to high-tech buildings, kind of covers from the early 2000s right up to present day. Obviously people still making amazingly architectural structured buildings, skyscrapers to go in that list, advanced technologies, modern building materials. They're built with lighter, taller, stronger structures, so it means they can do a lot more exciting things with their shapes and all sorts of stuff. So you get buildings that are twisted, buildings just covered in glass and having fun shapes and interesting styles and stuff like that. The design of them are supposed to be noticed and to astonish people as they walk by. And they also get wrapped in glass. They can also change in colour during the day as well, and they start start of the landmarks in our cities and our towns. We also get a rise in people having prefabricated buildings, so not the ones way back in the day, which was basically just a hut with some wood and some walls, but more homes that were properly designed in a contemporary style, pre-made and then transported into site. And we'll have one of those in this build as well, a modern version. So they are modular homes, they're built in parts, come together on site, and they're quite cheap and affordable as well, and probably a good way to fix the housing crisis in the UK at the moment. Interior wise, in the noughties, we had a very big boom in sales of IKEA furniture, which is inevitable because it's very cheap, stylish and affordable, not sponsored by IKEA. We also had the introduction of a feature wall, so we're stripping back all our pastel wallpaper and putting up a lovely one wall with super patterned, super colourful, and all the rest were like just white or plain colours. So you have to have your feature wall. You also had lots of wooden floors, sofas and other furniture of kind of a creamy colour, sort of one colour like palette type of things. We also had a lot of plastic and future looking furniture. So you get things like round plastic see-through chairs and sort of stuff like that in your builds. You also have a light brown kitchens that have dark tops on it, so we've gone from our orange wonderful 90s kitchen to a slightly lighter wood with darker tops. We also had plainer walls to go with our feature wall. There were lots of colour heavy bedrooms as well for kids especially, so it was very like themed. If you liked a certain thing, then you'd go all in for your design in your bedroom, a lot more expressing yourself and stuff like that. Still got our built-in furniture like wardrobes and stuff like that. We also have things like leather dining chairs and having glass tables and stuff like that. We also had a rise in people having open plan living, so opening up their houses, creating more space for everyone to exist in. We also had entertainment units for TVs as well, so you could have your big new flat screen TV with your PlayStation and your Xbox and your Wii and stuff like that all in one space, and it made go with your big feature wall as well. So our fun facts for 2000s. So in 2000 we celebrate the millennium, of course, with a lovely big party. We don't get the millennium bug. We also had the first women to reach the South Pole. We also had the Enigma machine being stolen from Bletchley Park. I think it was later returned. We also had the opening of the Tate Modern Art Gallery, along with our Millennium Bridge, which was open just next to it. And we also had a theft of 350 million pounds worth of diamonds from the Millennium Dome as well, and they like abseiled it down from the roof to steal from them. It was quite an impressive feat, really. In 2001 we had the Eden Project open, which was all about sustainability and showing different people's biomes and how plants and stuff and ecology down in Cornwall. We also had 1 million children conduct a science experiment to see if you could create earthquakes from jumping off your chair, which sounds extremely exciting. We should try and recreate that sometime soon. In 2002 we had a London City Hall open. We had the pop band Girls Aloud, created from pop stars The Rivals, and they went on to have a Christmas #1, I think, with their first song. We also had 50% of the population of Britain having internet access. In 2003, it was the start of the Iraq War. We had the first ever Minister for Children. when police were using the taser weapon for the first time. We also had the Bullring shopping centre in Birmingham open, which was a contemporary building. In 2004, we had the action movement Fathers for Justice protesting a lot and climbing up buildings and changing themselves to places. We also had the Millennium Centre in Cardiff open. Speaking of Cardiff, in 2005 we had the return of Doctor Who after its sad demise back in the 80s. We also had Britain's first self-supporting sculpture open in Manchester. We also had Ellen McCarthy breaking the world solo record for sailing round the world. We have more. We also had the New Forest become the 12th national park of the UK. We also had a Live Aid concert similar to the Live Aid concert to raise awareness and raise money for countries that needed aid and support. We also had the criminalisation of magic mushrooms, and we had 70% of Britain having internet access. In 2006, a whale was found to be swimming in the River Thames. We also had the Brit Awards, first ever ceremony. We also had Daniel Craig becoming James Bond. We had a small tornado in London, which probably been quite fun. And we also had the celebration of Hogmanay cancelled because of bad weather up in Glasgow and Edinburgh. In 2007 we had the climate change bill, if I can actually speak, brought in to tackle climate around the world. We also had the first transgender mayor, and we also had the smoking ban as well. In 2008 we had the last working mine close. We also had the opening of Terminal 5 at Heathrow. Boris Johnson became Mayor of London, and Lewis Hamilton became the youngest Formula 1 world champion. And the shop Woolworths closed sadly in that year as well. And in 2009 we had snow and bad weather stops the function of the country for a good few months. We also had the G20 summit in London and lots of protests and stuff that happened around that. We also had another British Formula 1 world champion in Jenson Button, and we had 80% of the UK population having access to internet. So I will leave you here with a tour around our town, and hopefully I will see you in the present day to see how our town has changed and grown since the noughties. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.